I'm just gonna connect with the Microsoft CISO on LinkedIn to see, see if he wants to chat with me. Like, I
Ah,
guess this is the only way to resolve this shit.
there's something to resolve. Uh, maybe I'll
Oh,
get to it. Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday,
man.
November 29th, a couple of days after Thanksgiving here in the US. Happy Thanksgiving to all the people who celebrated, all the Americans who celebrated. Costin, we were a day late because Costin was traveling back from Israel. Was that another TLP Black business trip? What is that? What was going on? And are
Yeah.
people listening to the podcast there?
We have a lot of people listening to the podcast, and again, hello to everyone there. Especially thanks to all the people who came for my talk. I gave a talk a bit about the combination of science fiction literature with AI, threat intelligence, building on my speech from Binding Hook Live, and a lot of people came. Everybody knows the podcast. I think we are super popular in Israel. So thank you everyone for listening, and thanks for coming to my speech on Wednesday.
Speaking of speech, Juanito, you mentioned you're going to connect with the Microsoft CISO on LinkedIn. One of the things we talked about last week, and I just want to get this out of the way quickly, last week was the coverage from CyberWarCon. And it turns out that the Microsoft CISO did a kind of a last minute behind the scenes speech there. It wasn't on the agenda.
Yeah.
It wasn't streamed and it wasn't recorded. So I don't know if all of those are deliberate things. I don't want to get into the conspiracy of it all. But we got some back channel stuff from folks that the Microsoft CISO was somehow recommending that the industry move towards less information sharing. And then you went on Twitter and it became a thing that people were doubting that that's it. Have we gotten any clarity at all about what he said on that podcast at CyberWarCon?
So I'm not entirely sure. And frankly, like, I didn't mean to kick off this much drama, contrary to
Yes,
popular
you did.
belief. But no,
I'm
I was,
kidding.
I was reading sort of the messages from folks in some of our group chats during the conference. I didn't get to see the talk myself, and I assumed I would get to see sort of videos or whatever, but apparently that's not going to happen. Um, but I heard from a bunch of people the same thing, which is this notion that, like, it was, I guess, some off the cuff comment or not, where um, he said something along the lines of, like, Microsoft would no longer be publishing stuff so as not to, like, spook threat actors, and something about, like, apparently there was something about some, like, sharing initiative with larger trusted companies. But where it gets super murky is he posted something on LinkedIn. It's all, like, about AI, AI attacks. It says nothing about this. And then Sherrod DeGrippo, who works over there, and I consider a friend. She was also not in the room, but kind of jumped immediately to be like, "Whoa, like, that's not what we're saying. Like, what are you talking about?" But I just don't know. Like, I like Sherrod. I just don't know how to reconcile the accounts of a bunch of people who seemed kind of very taken aback by that statement, and the idea of, like, no, we never said that. Like, I don't think that materialized out of nowhere. I also think there's an easier way to clarify this in just, like, stating what your actual position's going to be, right? Like,
Yeah, the LinkedIn
the
post didn't
blogs.
seem to have anything along those lines. The LinkedIn post, as my kind of recap of it, is that AI is adding a new chapter into the world of cyber that is now kinetic related. We're now starting to see cyber and cyber war, and as these AI driven
Right.
attacks emerge, we need to kind of think about it entirely different. Talking about, like, some, like, rules around acceptable use for AI in cyber and so on. But there were people who
Bro.
sat in the room who told me privately, there was some mention of oversharing, that the industry is largely oversharing and it's aiding threat actors more than it's aiding defenders, and we kind of need to be rethinking that. I wasn't in the room. I don't know what he said. There's no
Yeah.
evidence of it, but this becomes a story because Microsoft's role in threat intelligence, in cyber defense, and so on, is one of those too big to fail, is a part of the ecosystem. You can't ignore Microsoft's
Yeah.
relevance or importance to it, right?
Yeah. I think,
Like,
if
why is this a story?
anything,
Why do you care
Microsoft
what he
is
had to
one
say
of.
there?
Well, I care on a variety of levels. And the first one, and really simply stated, is Microsoft is a crucial player in global cybersecurity, like in all of our cybersecurity. All of us that operate on their ecosystem are largely dependent on them doing the right thing, being reliable. And more importantly, they have greater telemetry than anybody could ever hope to as far as endpoints go. So they really do see a lot more than anybody else does. They've got this like entire like it's not even a first mover advantage. It's sort of like it's a native land thing. It's theirs. And they also, for anybody who's been watching the dynamics of the space, they've been hiring up threat intel researchers like crazy. Like they've just been hiring everybody, which is great. That sounds awesome. You're building this like amazing capability and like domain expertise. So the more you recede, the, MSRC doesn't patch shit, is not responsive to anybody. Mystic is apparently going to publish less or not publish, and you're talking about like not sharing broadly. We don't see any initiatives of any kind, not social, not, more importantly, not like data sharing. So you've got this, you're hoarding all of the important resources to do cybersecurity. And I hope that means that you're using them wisely, but at least in a couple of areas, you are apparently sitting it out. And that's really concerning to me. And that's more about sort of like the responsibility that Microsoft has on its shoulders as the steward of at least two ecosystems, if not more. Then from the perspective of just being a threat intel researcher and sympathizing with threat intel researchers, I mean, nobody's asking me to advocate for, researchers, but look, we've got the benefit of having public personas and a microphone. And a lot of people in these bigger companies, they're there not because of the money. In many cases, they may not even be getting paid as well as they could be in other places. They're there for the love of the game and for the access that they have and for the ability to impact, hundreds of millions, if not billions of users and sort of like do a job that you couldn't do anywhere else. It's very akin, I think, to the folks who like stay at NSA and stay at some of these other places. It's sometimes to the detriment of their own careers, definitely to the detriment of their own earning potential, because they love what they do. And they can't speak up for themselves, but the conditions don't look ideal. Like if there's anything that this is all revealed is why the fuck is Mystic reporting to the CISO? You know what I mean? Like, is the CISO running research? Like, no disrespect to my CISO friends, love you guys, but like, historically, research is not a function that necessarily thrives under a CISO. Like, that's just being a, it's
Isn't
an
it under the
opinion
CISO
factory,
better than
right?
being under marketing?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. The problem with the benefit of marketing is it's used to a certain amount of unquantifiable metrics. It's used to a certain amount, and it's also used to thinking of publicity as a good thing. It's used to thinking of public engagement as a good thing, and the budgets tend to be less scrutinized, right? You've got money for events, which means you've got money for conference travel. You've got money to support folks, getting out there, shaking hands, and like kissing babies. This is a thing with the big companies, all of them to some degree, but there's this sort of like allergic approach to any of these folks having their own identities and getting to speak for themselves and even getting to tweet or getting to share data to some degree, like in a way where you trust them. They're domain experts. Like you don't need to babysit them to the point of helicopter parenting, right? Like these people know what it means to share relevant and valuable data without exposing customer stuff, without violating whatever privacy nonsense you've got going on internally. But in any case, like it's not so much. I'm not trying to indict Microsoft continually, but it was kind of like a weird red flag. And what concerns me is not whether they were willing to say this at CyberWarCon. I don't care about what they would say on stage or not. It's not the signal. It's rather, I'm worried that this was like a like somebody saying the quiet part out loud, like somebody saying what's said at Microsoft, flippantly. And if that's the way the discussion is happening at Microsoft, then I'm not surprised that all we've seen is like dwindling, diminishing blogs from them with less and less information. See them less engaged in sharing groups. See them, government used to complain about how little engaged they were before. I don't even know what the hell's going on there anymore. So I guess you're off the hook. But, and then what's the rundown? What do we get? Is this, I'm sorry, Ryan, like, you're not being skeptical enough. You're not even being paranoid enough when you read that LinkedIn post, because if you read it, it's not about cyber attacks at all. It's a rehash of the Digital Geneva Convention. It's Brad Smith's bullshit all over again, but now with like a thin veneer of AI. So AI attacks are the reason
the
why
AI-enabled abuse, which is kind of like we talked about Anthropic's report last week, right? We're starting to see nation states using AI to automate big parts of APT campaigns.
Yeah.
Costin, you read the LinkedIn post. Do you have any skepticism? Is this a story on your radar at all?
I mean, yeah, sure. I did read the. I presume that you mean the LinkedIn post about the AI side of things, in which Igor kind of recommends all. Actually, he urges. He says, like, I urge all companies and governments around the world to work together to block such attacks. So somehow it goes in an antithesis to what our sources are saying that he actually was trying to promote at the conference, which was, to cut data sharing and to limit like the trust circle. So I don't know, looking at the LinkedIn post, there's two things which attracted my attention. One is that he doesn't have a profile photo, which looks, I don't know, broken. It looks, yeah. Is it like the real Igor, or is it like a different Igor? I don't know. And the second one,
we'll add him and we'll find out.
I added him
I
as
added
well.
him. Let's see, man.
I just added him.
Hang out.
Like, let's.
Oh, good. Let me do the same.
Bring him on the pod. Get the man to come hang out here.
And two, the blog seems to be written with the AI. I don't know.
Of
like
course.
I get this. It's like a tingling sensation when I read something and I'm like, another AI summary. Somebody has like some ideas, puts them in an Obsidian, and then says like, hey, write me a LinkedIn post based on these ideas and make it sound like natural. It's me, blah, blah. And then the AI says, well, I do very few talks, but I thought the topic is important. So discussion, here's a quick summary of my points. And then the points, I don't know. I felt a bit guilty the last time we discussed this topic. You know why? Because you were like, have you seen the Microsoft Global CISO? Have you seen? And I was like, I have not, but what's going on? Like, you were
supposed to be our CyberWarCon correspondent.
And I was like already feeling guilty, and I was like, oh, maybe I was sick, maybe I was asleep, but turns out there was just like no broadcast. There was no broadcasted talk, so unfortunately I can't say what
Bro,
it was.
You feel guilty being on the. You feel guilty being on the stream. I was in the building and I didn't. But like,
and you don't
apparently,
feel guilty,
no? Well, it's not that I don't. At this point, I don't feel anything. I'm just like I also then went asking because it wasn't on the online agenda, and apparently it was like a last minute ad, and it was supposed to be after lunch, but they did it before lunch. So it's just like you just were not like. I'm sure this is all just conference shenanigans and the usual stuff, but I don't know, man. Like. They obviously know that we're talking about that aspect of things, and you just come out with like this summary about like AI whatever, which I'm happy to talk about AI attacks, but like if you read between the lines, this is not about AI attacks at all. This is rehashing Digital Geneva Convention, because you're saying there's a great grand threat. It's no longer just like cyber warfare. Now it's AI cyber warfare. And the only way to address this is for countries to work together, for people. So what are you talking about? Like to self-impose boundaries that, like, you know, maybe if we all shake hands and agree that we'll never do it, pinky promise, you know, be nice to each other, then we're all good. And like, it was a stupid fucking idea when when Brad Smith was pushing for it as like a digital Geneva Convention. I don't think it's a much nicer idea now. Like just pinky promising, or like there's wars and shit. People are willing to kill each other. You think that like this is all a matter of like everybody just sort of agreeing to be cool? Like what the fuck?
When the global CISO from Microsoft pops up on stage on a Friday at CyberWarCon, I mean, there's something to that. The CISO from Microsoft doesn't just like randomly appear at CyberWarCon. There must have been some purpose to that. I mean, he's got chief of staff and all these people that plan his travel and plan his whole life. I know how it works at that level. For him to
Is this like part of a sponsorship, or is it something that you?
I don't know. I'm not throwing. I'm not.
No. But like in general, if I want, let's say, my CISO of a big company to speak at any conference, how do you make it happen? Do you need to buy a sponsorship package, which guarantees you a slot?
I think
or
some
just
conference
pitch
organizers, if you have news, if you're newsworthy and you have some news value, and like you're the CISO for Microsoft, I would accept him on stage at my conference. Right. I mean, like Juanito says, Microsoft is a player, whether we like it or not. They're just one of the player.
Yeah.
Hearing from the Microsoft CISO is important. I'm not knocking CyberWarCon to put him on stage, paid sponsorship or not. There must have been a reason for him to be there to say something, and I don't think it's this Geneva, like, you know, let's watch how AI is getting involved with cyber and kinetic stuff. What do you think is the larger reason? It must have been some planting a seed with this audience, planting a seed internally at Microsoft. What do you think it is?
I think AI probably has a lot to do with the reason behind it, and there's point number 8 in his LinkedIn blog. Let me read it for you, actually, which is the one that
I refer you to point number 8.
I refer you to point number 8, 8.1 actually. It says, I urge policymakers around the world, policymakers, okay, to have discussions on appropriate use of AI. Appropriate as it relates to cyber attacks and cyber warfare. I think the last thing we need is for policymakers to have more discussions around the world. And we have seen like these days what goes on when you get the policymakers to have discussions about cyber stuff. They come up with ideas like chat control, like all these, they come up with
like
things
a digital
like,
Geneva Convention,
or like this kind of European invention that makes it very difficult for us to have 3 hours podcast because like we need to break from time to time. And like it just doesn't make any sorts of sense. Why do you need more policymakers to have discussions about cyber? No, I think this is wrong. We need technical people, we need cyber people to have discussions about cyber, and then they need to reach a decision, and then policymakers, they need to validate those decisions. I think like the whole thing is going the wrong way because you're getting people without any experience about cyber, like who know nothing about cyber. They're totally clueless about cyber. And not only that, but they're actually being briefed by people who have hidden agendas. And this is, I think, the totally wrong thing in this idea of having policymakers to talk more about cyber, which, in my opinion, is going all the wrong way. So,
my man, you just you just laid bare the entire thing, right? Like, why would the CISO for Microsoft go speak at CyberWarCon? Because CyberWarCon happens in Washington, D.C.
No,
and
his
message is that the way to solve cyber attacks, apparently, and before it was, you know, the great threat of cyber war, and now it's the great threat of Skynet cyber war, is for policymakers to have discussions, to open the table for these presumably regulatory discussions, because what else is policy supposed to do? And as you say, Costin, the trouble is that you get people with agendas who whisper in their ears, and some people would like to be those people who have the agendas whispering in their ears. And it's all Microsoft has ever like it's all they've been working on for the past like 3, 4, 5 years. Cyber Peace Institute, Brad Smith, like all these things that we've been hearing about over the past like half decade are just blatant attempts at regulatory capture. And look, let's be fair. Like Microsoft surely sees how much the US government has been souring against it for the past however many years. And their way of handling the situation has not been to materially improve the government's cybersecurity or to be more engaged in national defense or to be more engaged in information sharing or to create better access to data repositories. Passive Total is an example of them doing the opposite. Frankly, hiring every threat intel researcher you can get your hands on and then not publishing any other work, in a way, is a similar limitation that you're imposing upon the industry. Their contribution has not been one of improving anybody's cybersecurity recently. It's been one of making sure that they're the ones sitting at the table, or ideally setting the table for the discussions to be had about policy, and making sure that there's the best possible opportunity for regulatory capture. They're trying to defend their cloud business. They're now trying to defend their AI business. And one of the ways that you could see it in a really naked way, which I think DC folks wouldn't immediately be able to tell, but I got a front row seat to, is if you went to events in Europe and events in the US and saw how Microsoft people were engaging in those events, the talking points were surprisingly different. And, well,
expand on that a little bit.
I shouldn't say surprisingly, unsurprisingly different, but very pointed. In the EU, there was this like obsession with obviously cloud, but more importantly, they were there to like hand out free services on cloud, set the stage. It wasn't necessarily other events, it was their events. The Cyber Peace Institute hosts this. I went to an event literally hosted inside of the ICC by Microsoft. Tom Hurt was sitting there holding hands with the fucking prosecutor general as we all talked about cyber warfare in a Microsoft event hosted inside of the ICC. Like it was baffling to watch. And that, like, obviously not a fucking researcher in sight, nobody that actually knew what the fuck they were talking about. And then, like, in the US, what you get is more of this like kind of sharp elbows type stuff, where it's like they want to be there, they bring up the discussion, but there's nothing cute about it. There's no like veneer of, it's through collaboration or data sovereignty or whatever. Like in the EU, you got to paint them a nice, like, virtuous story. They love that shit. In the US, you just kind of thug your way into the conversation. Well, we've got more, we do better, you can't do this without us. And, if policymakers want to have some conversations, we'll do that behind closed doors. Anyways, fuck you guys, goodbye. Right? Like, okay.
This conversation is interesting to me because Igor, the global CISO for Microsoft, was actually hired post CSRB. You remember the CSRB report on Microsoft that really slammed them for like shoddy practices, blah, blah, blah. The really, really sharp report. Microsoft rejiggered their entire security organization, and Igor came aboard as I believe he was a bureaucrat somewhere else. Interestingly, I was Googling.
He was the CEO of an asset management company.
Yeah.
So, a risk management person.
Yeah. What I do, I went looking for any sort of reporting on Igor, and I saw a June piece from earlier this year that Microsoft actually moved its CISO out of the security division. He's now reporting into the cloud plus AI boss, Scott Guthrie. Sigansky previously reported to Charlie Bell, who is responsible for all Microsoft security and compliance. So they have their own corporate, whatever the structure they have there. Just to close the loop on this, I have had private conversations with people in my ear, and I know people internally at Microsoft who is not entirely happy with this the same thing you've been describing. And the feeling is that his personal opinion was allowed to jump on stage. around the sharing thing. So there must have been something mentioned there around sharing. We don't have any evidence. We don't have any
A bunch
proof.
of people didn't spontaneously decide to make up the same fucking story, right?
That's the weird
dude
thing,
said
yeah.
the dude said some shit, and frankly, just man up and say what your stance is about this. But more importantly, look, I don't want shared in the middle of this. I don't want.
I didn't know
any
Shai-Hulud was
mystic-
not in the room, because her response to you was like, that was not said at all. And I was like, okay, someone was there who is vouching for this. And then you tell me she was not even in the room either.
I mean, that's my understanding. I look, the point here is it's not about shared. It's not about Mystic, because they're not involved in the conversation at all. I don't want to, like, those are our friends. We love them. And they're in a tough fucking spot, because you know that these are bad decisions at a mega corporate level. Microsoft is a fucking aircraft carrier, right? Like, it's not a little boat. And no one person is going to decide things, but sure as shit, the pressure that comes from the top down is sizable. Even if everybody at the bottom wanted to move, I don't think that they would be able to really shift things. So I don't really want to have this conversation with our friends. This is not a peer-to-peer type thing. My concern is with the executives and discussing what the fucking role of Microsoft is in the security ecosystem. If you're going to be unfriendly, expressly uncooperative, and your entire thing is all we care about is regulatory capture, our discussions are not with you fucking kids, it's with, the adults in the room, fucking say that. Just say it. And don't make the researchers a part of that discussion at all, and let everybody know that if you go work at Microsoft, it's a fucking gulag, and you can just go sit in the back. Yeah, there's cool data to play with, but like, no one's ever going to read the manifesto you wrote on a roll of toilet paper, right? Like, okay, cool. If it's not the case, and frankly, I hope it's not the case, then just come out and say, this is what you can expect from us, and hopefully actually do it, right? Like, we're still waiting on the 6 past initiatives that they fucking promised us. But I think the larger thing that gets exposed in all this is, look, Microsoft can have a CISO who is just a security evangelist that goes around touting whatever bullshit the executives think is like a nice idea. That's cool. What I'm worried about, and I don't even know if this is the case, is Mystic reporting to the CISO, who is now like just like an AI cloud guy? Like, look, I'm in the AI org at my organization very purposefully in order to do AI research with my team for security problems. I'm not reporting to the chief information whatever officer on the side who has some very peculiar ideas about what it means to do security. And like, that's it. Look, Microsoft, you have crown jewels. You have a moat that is beyond belief, primarily in your domain expertise and your data. And your data is not even as valuable as the domain expertise that you've managed to snatch up from the rest of the industry. Don't misuse this shit. Don't buy the fucking Ferrari and then mothball it in a garage somewhere because somebody doesn't like the color of it, right? Like, it's just seeing security culture at Microsoft recede and recede and recede behind these like corporate pressures by a bunch of fucking people who just don't understand this shit and don't even care to understand this shit. It's just a mad dash for regulatory capture and nothing else matters. It's bullshit, man.
Under the banner of this Secure Futures initiative that gets updated every, whatever, it's quarterly or
it's
half
like
a year.
1984-esque, double speak, double think kind of shit. Like, we don't need this dissonance, man. Just like, let people do actual security work because we fucking need them to. And like, it's okay. You don't need to be two-faced about it. Let people go do real security work in peace with just clear parameters and being able to talk to people and let them post on Twitter and create a culture where you are genuinely contributing to the security ecosystem with some simple guides. Hey, don't talk shit about our executives. Don't speculate about the stock price. Okay, cool. Thank you. And then just let them be people engaged in security. Let them fly to conferences, help them host events, sponsor shit, be a good partner to the security ecosystem. and let the world get better by virtue of your presence, and go try to be the fucking Sith lords of like the galactic senate of fucking cyber warfare policy. You can do both. You
Get
guys
your
are
cyber
huge.
peace.
Get cyber. You go negotiate cyber peace for the rest of us, and let people who actually know how to do security fucking do security. Like, why is it mutually exclusive?
Hey, listen, shout out to Microsoft for allowing its CISO to go speak at CyberWarCon, because we never hear from
For
these
the last
people.
time, I guess.
And to close the loop on this 30-minute conversation, hey, Igor, you can come on this show. Well, come on the show. This is an open invite. We can have a conversation about like the goals and how we get to this discussion around blocking
Dude, it's
AI.
I mean, the only reason I'd say don't say that is like, obviously, you know, he's welcome and anybody's welcome. Lambert, Brad Smith, for all I care, you're all welcome. But this wasn't the point, right? Like, we didn't.
I know.
This isn't like a long con to like get somebody from Microsoft on the podcast. Like, that's not the thing
not at
here.
all.
It's just, what the fuck is going on, guys? Like, that's it.
Costin, over Thanksgiving weekend, we had big news around this Shai-Hulud 2.0, which is this supply chain attack where you're Trojanizing NPM packages. I gotta admit, I have not been following this closely, including the first one. This seems to be like a takeoff on the first one. There's a new report out from Wiz and a blog post from folks at Aikido Security around this. Have you been tracking this, and can you give me the TLDR around what this story is?
Yeah, this is a strange story in my opinion, and it's kind of the second coming of Shai-Hulud, which I think some people are quite upset with this name because, again, it piggybacks on Frank Herbert's Dune. This is like the big worm of the deserts of Arrakis, and think John, CyberWarCon, John was kind of annoyed by the fact that someone named it this way because it kind of conflicts with Sandworm, if you remember, to which it has absolutely zero connections whatsoever. This is more of, I guess, a kind of credentials harvesting factory. This is like how some people called it, an operation which doesn't have any kind of public attribution yet. There's no connections to known threat actors, but who would be doing something like this with the goal of creating server replicating code that harvests all sorts of credentials from repositories, from people's computers, with the ability to infect projects and move, like try to get between, containers. So it's kind of a crafty project, but it doesn't get this nation state or /APT feeling. It's more it looks like some kind of cyber criminal, one of these cyber criminal groups that specialize in credentials harvesting with stealers, things like Redline, and they found they discovered probably the fact that there's this huge ecosystem of NPM, the node packet manager, with Node being the ecosystem that a lot of people nowadays use to implement their websites using JavaScript. And they discovered that this is a kind of, some people called it the new PHP, in the sense that it's a house of matches, which is a new analogy
the entire
for the house
NPM
of cards.
ecosystem.
Yeah. Like, and the fact there's a supply chain attack targeting between 500 and 800 of these packages, which are used on 60% of all the websites out there, is just like, it's mind blown. This is absolutely crazy in 2025, 2026. And the problem, in my opinion, is that it's kind of tricky to detect as well, in the sense that exfiltration is always like going through GitHub, which kind of it rolls back to our discussion about the role of Microsoft and the security in the security ecosystem, because GitHub is controlled by Microsoft. It's operated by Microsoft nowadays.
It's owned by Microsoft.
It's owned by Microsoft. So I think Microsoft could also have spotted this, and they could probably spend more time trying to hunt for this kind of self-replicating massive operations. By the way, one of the things which don't make worms, let's say, the very popular, is that they are like usually quite flashy in the
They're
sense that they
noisy, yeah.
come and go. Like they peak and then they quickly disappear, and this probably goes contrary to what other more sophisticated threat actors have in mind, which is like long-term operations, stealthiness, slow polymorphism, slow replication. So worms typically they come, they last very few days, maybe up to a week or two, and then they just disappear. But I think that the danger with this case is that once they harvest your credentials, typically it won't be immediate. They won't use those credentials immediately to compromise your projects or whatever. I think it will take a bit of time until you are directly affected. So as a good precaution, in my opinion, it's important to change tokens. It's important to change API authentication credentials. If you think you have been affected by this, it's important to change passwords, to resecure your GitHub repositories and so on. Make sure two-factor is enabled. And depending on how deep this worm spread within your premises, like if it escaped, outside containers and things like that, you may have to do a lot of cleanup. So this can be like a very, very messy operation. And overall, I think it's still very it's a strange thing, like the one from September. So this is the second iteration. There was another wave in September. It's much smaller. I think they piggyback on the credential they harvested from
The first
their
one.
September
I was
operation.
going to mention, isn't
Yeah,
there like a
so-
mention that basically they were reusing some of the Singularity, the S1 and Gularity
from
NPM
September,
thing?
from September, right?
I think so, yeah.
You mean? So yeah, that was what I was about to say. That I think that the next wave, which come January maybe or December, depending on how well they're now able to exploit these harvested credentials, we may have another wave, which might be even bigger. So that's where I think supply chain protection comes to the spotlight, and it's important to have some kind of a mechanism that spots whenever like a bunch of suspicious shady code suddenly appears in your website and projects.
So there are no controls today. Like this can happen again next month. Is there like
I
is
think
there a
so.
vulnerability there? Is there a weakness in the system? Like what causes this to be a
See,
real
it's
thing?
the implicit trust, the fact that nobody writes the code from scratch nowadays. Like everybody piggybacks on existing libraries. So you want to develop your website, you're not going to do it like the old school, write it from scratch. You're just going to use templates, libraries, you're going to use other themes, and if you code it in JavaScript, you're going to use a lot of libraries that implement things like basic things, tables, input boxes, communication with a backend API, and so on. And the moment that one of those has a supply chain attack, then your own website is basically immediately affected by the supply chain attack. And it's pretty easy because you need to update these packages with npm, and you need to keep everything updated. I think even our website a couple of weeks ago, it broke because of a dependency problem with the package that was updated. It was no longer like overnight. It was no longer like the functions didn't look the same, and broke the API in one case. And this kind of stuff, I think it's not necessarily just restricted to npm, but there's also like a lot of supply chain attacks of the same type with pip, like the Python libraries and Python repositories that a lot of us analyzed in the past. So it's more of a kind of intrinsic issue to the ecosystem where you piggyback on other people's code and libraries. I think the only difference here is the flashy nature of the updates with these packages, which is that you implicitly, let's just update everything before we build the website, and the surface, the risk, the opening for supply chain attacks is like tenfold to old school code.
Whose job is it to police this? Is it GitHub? Is it the NPM registry? Is it the end user? Is this should you be paying for a scanner somewhere along the line? Like, what is the answer?
It's a good question. I think everyone is doing a bit. By the way, the guys, the NPM guys, they're also doing a lot of like you say, policing work, and I think Microsoft is also doing. But the problem is like with GA10, with that, if you remember the XZUtils attack, is that this can be obfuscated and it can be like really tricky to spot. That's one. And two, this can happen very fast. So even if you shut it down like 2 hours later, it's still like
damage is done.
a lot of distributions, a lot of people get hit, infected, and doesn't matter anymore. It's just like too late. Everything is just it burns in a flash, in a quick flash. And how some people say like it was a beautiful big flash, very beautiful. And then he died like a dog. Yeah.
And Juan, what is the follow up? Just kind of roll back dependencies, rotate everything, rotate tokens, rotate SSH keys. Like, what's the lasting advice for the audience?
I mean, I have no idea, to be honest, because it's like a weird ecosystem thing. And frankly, I feel like I don't understand NPM well enough, in that it's not that I don't understand the mechanism of NPM itself, but I don't fully comprehend the community that leverages it and all of its ramifications, or more importantly, like their workflow and lifestyle. Like, to me, this feels like it's closer to the front end folk, and they're kind of like a mystery realm in some ways, which is not to really alienate them or say that it's not important, because that stuff intersects almost perfectly with any AI applications these days, right? Like, a lot of the AI tools that you use, you install through NPM, right? Some of the OpenAI agent stuff, open code, etc. And of course, it's like critically important to most folks running some kind of Linux something. So like, it's not unimportant. I'm saying that I there's a foreignness to it that makes it hard for me as a threat, researcher, to really understand the extent of the threat. And I also, just looking at this threat actor and the Singularity attack from before, and now the Shai-Hulud in 2 waves, like, we still don't know who this is and how they're leveraging this. Like, they're not doing it for fun, right? Like, I don't know that I would say that this is necessarily criminal. This has been going on for a bit. And we've yet to see sort of like the clear leverage of what they're getting, other than to extend to the next attack and to the next
Maybe we'll never see it, though, because if it's credential harvesting, maybe it's getting repackaged and resold. Maybe it gets shared with nation states. Maybe there's a nation state component. Does it matter to you, Costin, that it's cyber criminal versus a nation state adversary? Does that make it more important or less important in your mind?
I think it necessarily, the dimension of the adversaries focus on, I think, is not necessarily very important in this story, but it's more about the implications of that. And let's say if it's an APT, then it means they're going to focus on their mission, and whatever their mission is, it can be like, I don't know, military, it can be strategic, it can be gaining a foothold. While if it's criminal, their goal will be immediately to make as much money as possible, deploying ransomware, destroying data, encrypting, stealing, things like that. So that means that if it's criminal, you can expect the retaliation faster. So that means that you need to rotate everything as quickly as possible. If it's APT, there's 2 options here. One, you have more time, and 2, they're already in your network. So if they're already in your network, probably then you start to do regular threat hunting. But otherwise, you may have a bit more time, especially if you're not their primary target.
All right, let's move on. This week we got a detailed report from CISA, our favorite agency here, the U.S. government cybersecurity agency, about mobile communications best practices guidance document. with some wording from CISA that, listen, these mobile spyware attacks are not only is it real, but it's targeting, what is it? They talk senior government, military, political positions, anyone who likely possesses information of interest to these threat actors. And we actually got a guidance document from CISA on best practices for iPhone, best practices for Android. Costin, you're our iOS security lockdown mode correspondent. What did you make of this report? First of all, like, it's good that CISA is acknowledging that this exists, and we're going to get some guidance. But did you like the actual guidance that they provided?
I think probably they had to fight a lot to get this out, and I think it's important they put this guidance out, and I think they did the best under the conditions. Meaning that, you know me, I am like more of an iOS extremist. And I would have like a lot more measures in there, but what they put is basically enable lockdown mode, stop sending SMSs, change your DNS to Google or Cloudflare or Quad9, turn on a VPN, which is it's a nice recommendation. Although they primarily want you to use Google's VPN, sorry, not Google, Apple's VPN, which is the Apple iCloud Private Relay.
Yeah, what is that? What is the Apple iCloud Private Relay?
That's essentially Apple's VPN that you can turn on, and it will work in Safari. So it's like it won't protect your traffic everywhere. So I think that's one of the biggest limitations. But when you turn that on, I think, yes, it does add another layer of anonymity. It does add another layer of protection. So I'm like fully for enabling it. The only problem is that in my experience, for unknown reasons, it complains that this Wi-Fi network is not compatible with the Apple Private Relay, when in reality, there's no reason why it shouldn't be compatible. And I think the only reason why they say that is they couldn't establish a connection like in the first try. Maybe because there was like an authentication portal with the hotel or like one of these things. And then it says something like the iCloud relay will be disabled, which is why I personally use a VPN anyway when traveling. I'm like a strong supporter of the idea of using a VPN. Again, I think I said it before. I make a list of all the people who tell you not to use VPNs. They go into my book under the not okay /VPN folks, because I think it's a bad recommendation. I've seen so many foolish security people get their credentials compromised at security conferences because they were not using a VPN, because they thought that their computers are secure because they use SSL, TLS, whatever, for all their modern applications. And you have no idea like how many cases that I have seen where people were just foolishly trusting the Wi-Fi and thinking that they are safe when they're not safe. And overall, I think they're okay. You know me, I would add a few other things like disable iMessage, disable FaceTime, which is why they call me the iOS extremist. Or but I think overall it's good that CISA got this out, and maybe in the future they'll have like tougher recommendations, and especially cookie points for enabling lockdown mode as a recommendation in there.
Especially for high target individuals. One of the things that stand out to me in the iPhone specific and the Android specific recommendations was a big recommendation to review and restrict app permissions in the settings, privacy and security. How many of us do that? How many of us go through app by app and says, you have access to my microphone, you have access to the camera, you have access to my location? I mean, if you become an extremist, you have to be doing all of that too, right? Because there's big attack surface there as well, right?
I do that. I do that all the time, and it's annoying. Like somebody wants you to send them something like their live location or whatever, and you need to.
There's legitimate use case for that. We're walking around the city together. I want to share where I am so we can meet somewhere.
Live location, correct? Yeah, so it's annoying. It's annoying, but again, it depends if you care about security. I understand that there's a certain threshold, and there's like people who care about being targeted above that threshold and below it. But I think we as security people, we have a higher chance of getting targeted than the others. And there's so many cases, and we know so many companies that actually found APTs in their networks, and they never went public. They never published any root cause analysis of how they got owned in the first place, what the hackers took. They tried to shove it under the carpet, if I may say so. And yeah, I mean, it's important to care about security. It's important, especially if you work in security, to care about your own security. And there's so many links in this chain, from restricting privacy and security settings like location, camera, microphone, and so on, all the way up to VPNs, private relay, resolvers, Google, or Cloudflare, whatever DNS you want to use, and yeah, iMessage and FaceTime.
Juanito, shout out to CISA for dropping this report. I mean, to acknowledge, yes, that mobile spyware exists feels a little dated. Feels like they're 5 years late. But the idea of getting out official comms to folks and trying to, raise some energy around folks protecting themselves is important.
If Costin feels it's good guidance, then I'm, I'm okay with it. But
I didn't say it's a good. I said it's good they got it out. I didn't say the guidance itself is good.
So in that case, I'm not entirely certain what we're doing here, right? Like, no, seriously, like, okay, like if it's good guidance, then that would be great. If it's, for me, this is one of those situations where I get that raising awareness is important, and it's like a whole side of our industry is devoted to awareness raising, and then you end up getting, this kind of weird bullshit like the stop hack lore nonsense that like Bob Lord is now pushing, as if that's the most important fucking thing we could be doing. Which is apparently about like correcting our awareness raising, or like
influencers talking to influencers.
Influencers
stop influencing
about
in this way.
Other influencers. Sorry. But
I have a bunch of friends who signed it, and I'm sure folks were, genuinely felt like this is all. Like,
it's stupid. It's
fucking cyber trash.
I also just don't understand. Like, you go on that website and like there's no actual part where they debunk the hack lore. So what? You're just sharing the letter, the fact that other people signed the letter, and like there's no actual resource. You're like,
stop promoting this shit.
Fuck this. Yeah, like no, I it's called shaming. It's called shaming. But my point here is like this is one of those areas where I'm glad we're raising awareness, but for what? Like, and I'm not saying that as in like, I'm not saying that it doesn't have value. People should know. People need to be able to defend themselves. That's going to mean they need to be aware. But the larger limitations around this are imposed by vendors, and the capabilities are limited by vendors. And there's no service industry that can function, and at least like half of the ecosystems involved in this. So really, what is it that we're telling people to do? That's yes. There's the high level hygiene stuff, and frankly, look, there's a reason why I want to focus on vendors. When we talk about permissions, Apple, I think, has done a really good job about defaulting to everything is sort of in its own little sandbox of entitlements, and you need to expressly give each application permission to have your location. And if it has your location, is it only while you're using it? Is it one time, or is it always? And if you give it always, is it precise location or just vague location, right? Because like the weather doesn't need to know what street, what side of the building you're in. It just needs to know kind of like a vague sense of where you are. So like Apple's done a great job doing that shit. And you don't have to go expressly triple checking all of your permissions, because they're not set when you're trying to install something mindlessly. You give it, like in Android, where you go, have every permission on earth just so that my child can play Angry Birds. You go, there you have to go backwards, and you have to force somebody to be aware and go check their permissions. But Apple, I think has designed it in a much smarter way. But I think that speaks to the point that I would love to see more advocacy, like consumer advocacy from CISA to these companies. I know that they don't have the power to compel anybody. I'm not telling you to compel anybody. I'm just saying, like, come up with some best practices that are actually best design practices and then say, look, this is what consumers need from you. I think the NCSC does a much better job in that sense of like, yeah, they're putting out the usual kind of awareness raising drivel, but then they're also turning around to vendors and going, okay, guys, like this is what we think you need to be
The
implementing.
call
And
to
like,
action is in the wrong place,
they,
right? The call to action
yeah,
shouldn't be on consumers, but it should be on the people providing the controls.
exactly.
And it's the
Exactly.
same thing I felt about the NPM thing. Like telling people to just go rotate, change things out, rotate keys, blah blah blah. When the control should be somewhere
Well,
else, it shouldn't be on the end user. If that
that
ecosystem
part
is like that,
is that part's rough, man, because like that gets you into like, yeah, no, you do need the developers. Like these are technical consumers, right? Like if you're using API keys and tokens and whatnot, like we presume that you know how to use those and what they mean and to keep them safe. That doesn't mean you know how to keep them safe. It just means, you know, you should understand how to use them. Um, so you do kind of need to appeal there. But part of the reason that you're having to do big appeal is a lot of the services are not going to auto rotate a token or change a
right?
secret for you, even if they know it's compromised, because they're afraid that they're going to cause some kind of downtime in some production system and they're going to be held liable for it in theory. So, you know, it is. I think it all just kind of circles right back to like, in what direction are you putting the call to action, and how much action are the people that you're putting the onus on even able to do?
Yeah. Just staying in this mobile spyware space, we got news out of Cyberscoop reporting on the NSA group, asking the courts to put a stay on pause the permanent injunction that prevents it from targeting WhatsApp with its spyware while they appeal their decision. And there's like a little bit of an intricacy there. They're saying that competitors have no such restrictions, so they're at a disadvantage. And then it bans NSO from selling or maintaining any technology to collect information from user devices if the target information comes from WhatsApp, even if the collection method never touches WhatsApp server. So they're saying even if we don't hack WhatsApp, we're not even allowed to extract information from WhatsApp. And for legitimate law enforcement purposes, they make their blah, blah, blah arguments. This is just a bizarre, amusing story to me to say to the court, hey, please allow me to continue hacking while we're doing this. Costin, give me some color on what you think this is hoping to accomplish.
But yeah, it's like a tough story if you ask me. I see that the NSO, I mean, they're really trying to fight more like make it seem that they are actually fighting against these U.S. government sanctions, right? In the sense that they could very well just spin like another company who is taking care of the WhatsApp part. So it feels like they're just trying to make it look like they're following all the legal ways in order to beat that sanction issue. Obviously, I think we were discussing it recently that there's other people interested in acquiring NSO, and
They did though, right?
I'm sure that's the whole
which
game.
they did.
Yeah.
So
That's the whole
I
game
think
here
that's
is the
that's
the purchase.
That's what matters. Please go ahead.
No, I mean, look, you're right, Costin, about like making a big show of like trying to follow things, but also this just adds to the bizarreness of that company getting sold, bought in whatever capacity, because it has, I'd forgotten, it has legal problems attached to it. Like, who the fuck buys a company that's in like litigation with one of the largest fucking companies on earth? Like,
And
talk
losing.
about a toxic asset, like by definition. So I don't know, man. Like, one way to read this is that is a signaling and trying to show that you can like essentially follow the rules and that you want to follow the rules. Another way to read it is these people got so if they already bought it, these people got sold a bill of goods that they were not aware like how bad that situation is, and now they're having to go, wait, we should deal with this lawsuit. We should get permission to keep operating. We can't. This doesn't work if we're not allowed to do this and that. And like, is this the original owners and the people trying to negotiate the deal, trying to work with it? Is this the new owners trying to get the administration to pay attention to the fact that they're now like friendlier and could work with the U.S.? Or is it the same people who is it the people who got sold this shit who suddenly realized just how fucked that company is and that they spent their money on this thing?
I remember one of our very earlier episodes of this podcast, Costin was educating us on the fact that NSO Group was like the pride of the Israel tech sector. Had a big building with a big sign on top right next to Microsoft and so on. We are discussing this and making it sound that this is some company in the, like, some fly-by-night company that's scrambling for relevance and scrambling for its own kind of, that this is existential for them. And maybe it is. But do you really think that it's fallen from grace so much from being the pride of Israel to being a nothing burger, trying to scramble through, sneaking into the US? It feels like we're underplaying NSO's existing importance.
I think the NSO is still quite relevant in the sense that I'm confident that their business is still going on. They still have customers. And I think the best parallel to this story is how we saw Hacking Team reinvent themselves into Memento Labs, and how we saw them come up with a new zero-day, they with like a new tool set, new types of malware, mobile malware. And remember that Hacking Team was kind of, destroyed after Phineas Fisher went in, dumped everything. That was end of the road for them. And somehow they found a way to reinvent themselves with the note that they are obviously a much smaller company. NSO is like a giant. And I've been
Still
in
is,
Israel.
right?
Yeah, and I've been in Israel many times. I talked to people, and everyone was saying it was a great honor to actually be hired to work there, because they only hired like the best of the best to work on exploit development, tool sets, and so on. So even nowadays, I think that they still have customers, but probably what everybody realizes here is that, and this is a global shift. I think it's not just NSO, but globally, and related to the question that I asked on X some time ago, what does a legitimate corruption-free offensive security company looks like? And this, I think, this is the issue here, because the people who buy these companies, they want to make them profitable. They want to essentially, they want a return on their investment. So if they paid $500 million for a company, they want 750 back or $1 billion back. And to make NSO profitable, you need to be able to sell in the US, you need to be able to sell into NATO countries, all their allies, and this doesn't work as long as they are sanctioned by the US Gulf. So I'm confident that they're spending huge amounts of money to get them unsanctioned, lobbying, and so on. And these, lawsuits are probably part of that process, and it's important. It doesn't matter, I think, that much if they lose or not. What matters is to keep the fight on, to keep the flame on, to keep the fight on. And people keep talking about this. And as my marketing teacher once said, there's no such thing as bad publicity. And as long as people talk about NSO, there will be customers willing to close their eyes and acquire these tools, especially if they are famously good and maybe a bit cheaper than the competition. So there remains to be seen what it means from a legal point of view with them going against Meta. But like I'm confident, seriously, if you want to target people with WhatsApp 0 days, they can just pin like some company somewhere in UAE, or a lot of companies now appearing in Estonia, Latvia, in these Baltic countries doing exploitation, and just go through there and pretend that there's no connection whatsoever.
Juanito, you got some closing thoughts on the NSO case against WhatsApp, and where does this go?
I'm just confused. To be totally honest, I'm just utterly confused by what's happening with that company right now. Costin's completely right. You're completely right about like if it is about like them functioning, why would you keep going with this shell? Why wouldn't you just create a different shell company and sort of function? And to be honest, I don't think my gut instinct is that they did that they have done exactly what we're describing, and then they found some idiots who were willing to pay for the carcass of the old company. And
Yeah, you
you know,
think
why
that's what we're
not?
seeing happening in the background here? That
Well,
some of the stuff that Costin is recommending has already been moved into different
oh,
sections.
I mean, we always knew this was happening, and it was like there were other Israeli companies that just shut down operations before they had a chance to get sanctioned. But they shut down and moved to Cyprus or moved to the UAE, right? Like it's it to me what's it I would be baffled if NSO people didn't do that and they just decided to hold down the fort. I don't even know how you convince your talent to stay there with you for any of that kind of shit. Um, so I'm sure that there must have been an exodus, there must have been a change of sort of the shell game and whatnot, and that's why when we first talked about this becoming a thing, what did I say? I was like, what are they buying? Like, are they buying the intellectual property? Did NSO really have such a good software harness and implant and like throwing mechanism and all those things where you're like, yeah, this is worth millions of dollars for us to acquire rather than build it ourselves? Because I don't, are there active exploits that come with that? Do those still matter? Are you getting talent that comes with that? Like, or are you just getting, like, what are you fucking buying? And it's really hard, especially considering who theoretically bought this. Like, we were told it was some kind of Hollywood producer. Like, I think that's a great way to pull one over somebody who doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, doesn't know how to evaluate the situation they're getting themselves into, and has more money than sense. And like, who wouldn't take that deal with a
The product
toxic,
still exists, though.
depreciating asset?
But like you're saying, the product still exists with customers and
Yeah, but it could be NSO2 in UAE, and it might be the exact same software stack, and who the fuck's gonna check? Who
yeah.
knows, right? Like, it's
Let's
bizarre,
switch
man.
gears. I got a new threat intel report out of Arctic Wolf Labs. It's not a company we talk about often, so I don't know the quality of their work or some of
We
their
have some
previous
friends
things. Maybe.
there.
Yeah, very, very good quality. And I mean, shout
Good,
out
good.
to our friends there, like Dimitri,
Marcus
Smile,
Knives, man.
Marcus.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let me read a sentence at the beginning of the report. In September 2025, Arctic Wolf Labs identified a U.S. company that was targeted by rom-com threat actors by SOC Golish, operated by TA569. What the fuck is going on, Costin? Can you tell me what this report is about?
Brother, I feel that this report is deeper than the vast majority of reports that we see nowadays, that you just read from start to end and they're like easy to understand. Here, well, I think that what Arctic Wolf came by with this particular case is a very, very interesting phenomenon. It's something that needs to be studied, especially because there's clearly a combination of different actors, one of them being what they say with the medium high confidence GRU unit 29155,
29155, yeah.
which according to Dmitry Alperovich, that would be the, what was it, GRU unit 29155 Romcom, correct? Which is different from GRU Sandworm or the GRU Sophacy, I guess. But that's like just one part of the pie. The other parts being the so-called Sogolish threat actors. Although Sogolish itself is just this malware that we see it like almost everywhere nowadays.
Yeah.
Now, the particular Romcom branch of what they're seeing here, deploying this mythic loader, I think it's super, super interesting. For memory, what is this GRU unit 29155? It's the guys, I think, is it the do Microsoft call them? The Cadet? Is it the Cadet Blizzard?
Cadet Blizzard, yeah, these are the guys that we had discussed previously that were not only doing cyber but had pivoted to doing sabotage and like not only sabotage but like
poisonings, assassinations. The guys who tried to kill Skripal in the UK and accidentally killed some other you say, like innocent people in the process. So these are the guys that we're talking about in this particular story, and it's interesting to see this combination. We talked a lot about governments and nation state sponsored operations piggybacking, or sometimes being using criminals as wingman to piggyback on other traditional cyber criminal malware. So that's I think um, a very important trend that we're seeing more and more nowadays, especially when it comes to Russia. I just wanted to say, like, props to Arctic Wolf to coming up with, like, when everyone's talking about China. And if I may go back to your previous story, Ryan, about the CISA recommendation, you know how that
China. There's China in the first paragraph
China,
of it. I
China,
wanted to
correct.
bring it up, but I just
You
didn't say
wanted,
anything.
right? But like, let's don't kick dead horses. But yeah,
Exactly.
here's something that which is not China, which is super super interesting, and there's indicators of IOX. By the way, some people came to me there after my speech, and they said, like, we are saying, like, the right way IOX, and we are
IOX.
part of the club that yeah, we want T-shirts that say IOX, or it didn't happen. And we're gonna make those T-shirts, so don't worry.
IOX or GTFO, is that our new?
IOX or GTFO, yes.
Are we allowed to use? Is this a trademark thing? Do we need to talk to some of our
No,
friends?
man, I'll open source that. And the only thing which is still in balance is how do you properly spell IOX. I'm not yet sure, because, like, if you would
You would
use
come up
the
with a
kind
new spelling
Romanian
name in convention.
pronunciation, then it would be something like I and then OK. But like other people say,
Put it as those.
AWK has to be in the picture OK.
Ok. Oh.
Stop
Ok.
it.
Yeah.
One of the
We'll
things
stylize
Arctic
this shit.
Juanito, one of the things Arctic Wolf, they didn't identify the victim, but their big takeaway here was that this was a U.S. organization that works closely with Ukraine. So we kind of understand the reason probably why they were targeted. Costin, you said they were IOX, good, solid IOX. Did you put it into your system? What does TLP Black say about this?
I admit that I haven't put them through the system this time because I've been traveling, so just came back. It was a really really busy trip, and I didn't have a lot of time to look at this, which is why I said that this deserves like a closer, much closer read, and to pay attention to what is happening here, because I think that this story is not singular. There are threads you can pull from this story, and for sure you can find additional things. So this is like on my to-do list for the next week.
Juanito, why aren't there more reporting on Russian operations? And I know we discussed this on the podcast when you've been strong with suggesting that companies like Cisco, Talos, and some other companies are under like some economic pressure because they have factories in China. So we can understand why there's like a certain limitation around reporting from China. There's none of that from Russia. And you can't. The Russians have been pretty active. They're at war with Ukraine. You have to imagine there's a lot of things happening there. We get some stuff out of Ukraine, cert, but American companies aren't seeing or finding anything. Why is that?
Oh, they're seeing and finding plenty. I think you're kind of missing the point, right? Like if you're unwilling to do the China thing because there's Chinese manufacturing, you're not unwilling to publish on Russia because you care about the Russian government. You're unwilling to do that because it's an incredibly confusing situation right now as to what the U.S. government's stance is on Russia. So you're not trying to not piss off.
That shouldn't stop threat intel shops from exposing Russian APTs, though.
I agree that none of this should stop any of it. If we were,
but it's real. You're saying that teams are waiting to see where the wind blows.
I'm saying that the same kind of risk-averse bullshit that we were discussing earlier today applies across the board when you have people who are making these like risk assessment, quote unquote, decisions about what the value of publishing threat intel is or what the value of sharing is. And, you know, the kind of discussions that you get with quote unquote policymakers in the room, those sorts of people with their bullshit jobs when they're sitting around with nothing to do, they come up with decisions, blanket decisions about whether we should be publishing nation state stuff at all. And if we are, should we say who it is? And if we do, should we, how do we assess what the risk is to our business? And is it going to affect, could it affect our business with the US government? Could it affect our business with, governments in Eastern Europe, blah, blah, blah. You do all this like bullshit assessment. It's why you see, like, for example, giant companies like consulting companies, KPMG, PwC, Deloitte, etc. I can't think of a more nightmare situation to try to publish in than working one of those motherfuckers, because you have a bunch of your whole business is about like being the global like consultancy for every government on earth, and it means you literally will have a problem no matter what in whatever you publish if you think that this is meaningful enough to have problems with. But I would point to like PwC has somehow managed to power through a lot of that, but I would put that on the wisdom they've had to take an asset like Chris McConkey and make him, he is like global partner for cyber. Like you have somebody who sits at the top, who is a practitioner, who understands this shit. And he's up there making decisions at that strategic level with the right folks. And that's why PwC still publishes. They still, not a ton, but they still publish. They've got a great private reporting service that, we don't discuss it enough, but they do really well.
That's not publishing though. That's that's sales.
But they speak at conferences with that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like they do have a proper reporting service. They do publish blog posts, which I'm saying it has got to be almost impossible. Like it's amazing that they can get stuff out. You've got 3 or 4 other consultancies that have, big threat intel teams. You don't see shit from them, right? So in that sense, they shine. But what's the counterexample is look at Accenture. They bought iDefense, which had a bunch of great talent in it. It had like a long history of reporting services with some friends of ours having worked there for long stretches of time. And it's gone. Like they fucking, they grabbed it and it turned to fucking dust in their hands. How do you manage a business like that in a big 4 consultancy type thing is quite tough.
Costin, is it fair to say that we are seeing not enough Russian reporting publicly? And because when I asked the question originally, you said, good question. Why aren't we seeing more Russian?
Yeah. And I mean, there's all sorts of different options and there's all sorts of different opinions out there. And I think Juan is right about it. Whenever you're publishing a threat intelligence report, you need to make a decision. And that is it in line with the current narrative that gets rehashed and pushed by publications like the New York Times, Washington Post, and so on? Because those reporters will just go out to talk to intelligence officials, like their sources, and if those guys say like, this is bullshit, don't even think about it, then you're probably wasting valuable resources. So this kind of the current narrative, although many people might not even realize that's how it works, the current narrative is important if you want your story to get out there. I do think that there's not enough reporting on Russia. I think everyone is just obsessively pushing towards more and more Chinese reports. I think that's the flavor of the day when it comes to CTI. But I think it's also important not to forget about this. And still, there's been over the years so many surprises. And I'll mention just one. In terms, for instance, of supply chain attacks that originally targeted Ukraine, but like then spread all over the world. Perhaps the most destructive attack in history, right? Not Petya. And Bad Rabbit and so on and so on, the SolarWinds supply chain attack. I think there are still potential to operations coming out of Russia. And I'm happy that companies like Arctic Wolf write about them.
Yeah, I shout out to the guys at Arctic Wolf. I did not know that Marcus Nice and some of these guys were over there. So shout out to Arctic Wolf. We got IOX. We got a new threat intel report from Russia. Hopefully we can get some more activity in that space. I wanted to touch on a story that happened a couple of weeks ago, but we didn't really get to it. Was this FCC rescinding the telecom cyber rules that were imposed on these telcos after which one of the typhoons was it? Salt Typhoon.
Yeah.
So speaking of China back hack, Salt Typhoon, post Salt Typhoon, the FCC implemented some, I don't call it new rules, but they approved the use of CALEA, C-A-L-E-A, which is the legal authority for telecom cybersecurity, and added some controls that had to be in place at a minimum. One was MFA for all administrative accounts, network segmentation, strict access controls, and role-based authorization across network equipment, audit logging real time. The new FCC commissioner says basically the telecoms have done a good enough job of catching up. We don't need this. The CALEA that they used was, not really legal. We're back to, I don't know how to ask the question, Juan. It feels like a softening of a hardening that we all clamored for, which is for these telcos to observe some of the most basic. What do you make of the FCC rescinding these rules and saying that the telcos have been fine?
What do you make of CALEA?
I'm surprised it took this long. That's it. I'm surprised it took this long. Everybody, I'm joking, but I'm not joking. Like for the past few months, I keep saying, regulation, like we don't do that anymore, right? Like, and we're all ha ha ha, and then we keep going. You're like, no, bro, like we don't do that anymore, right? Like this government is not interested in regulating tech companies or big companies. Regulation is a dirty word in this kind of environment, and that's not a joke. Like it's an actual stated mission that we are going to make government quote unquote smaller by removing its paws from the poor afflicted corporate sector. So it's not that the regulations in place were good or not good. It's not whether they were useful or not. It's not whether the telcos, the telcos behaved so well that we don't need to do this. It's just any regulation that got passed in the last administration is not worth keeping. And you go, okay. Did the telcos do well or not? Some of them did, and some of them didn't. Some of them were very responsive. A lot of the real intel about Salt Typhoon only really came from Lumen and a couple of other spots, right? Microsoft, everybody else was just hanging on, right? They were fucking trying for dear life to get into that story, and everybody else and everyone fucked it up. But if there were places that actually knew, it was like the bigger telcos that were responding to this and had competent people. They were the ones really involved in it. So it's not like they're incompetent or they don't have talent. It's some of those orgs are not the ones I would say were in dire need of regulation.
Why do we have to tell them to use MFA? Why do we have to push them to use MFA though?
Here's my point. The bigger ones were fine, but for every big one, you have 3 small ones that had no idea what the fuck they were doing and had no way to actually manage these things. There's no such thing as a small telco. No, there is. There absolutely is. There's a lot of smaller shops that kind of congregate on these things, and then you have the satellite ISPs, and then you have this, that, and the other. But like, I think the bigger point here was you can regulate telcos, and you can regulate the let's say like public broadcasters and stuff like that, because there is already an existing mechanism like the FCC. You can't. It's not as easy to just kind of walk in and be like, and now we will regulate the VPN providers. And you're like, well, what mechanism does that? Is that part of the FCC? Like that's not as readily available. So in some ways, you kind of use the mechanism that you had on hand. Is it meaningful? Were those regulations really doing anything? I doubt it. I don't know. Like I'm not anti-regulation. If anything, I talk about it constantly. I just don't think that we were really doing any meaningful regulation. We would start by like slapping someone's hand publicly, but then we wouldn't implement anything meaningful. And then we'd be like, look, we did it. And you're like, you didn't do shit, but thanks for coming, right? Like it was it's a very sort of strange sort of sense of deflation. And it's the same as the
But in that
pledge
sense,
that we
if
were
Brendan
shitting on all
Carr,
day long.
in that same sense, if Brendan Carr, the FCC chairman, saying we are correcting course, you agree that this was just like slapping the wrists, not real regulation, then there needs to be correcting course then.
I'm not. I don't put me on the same side as this FCC or
FCC
anything
chair.
like that. It's not that. It's not that. Look, any FCC chair, right? Like Ajit Pai only like Ajit Pai looks amazing in hindsight now, but like for me, the real issue here is not who is in the FCC or not. It's that like I understand the free market mentality that radically wants to remove government oversight and limitations on the private sector. In cybersecurity, we were not doing very well with the regulations we were being given, but it's not because regulations weren't necessary. It's because they were like hand-wavy bullshit from people who wanted to get a job at the companies they were supposed to be regulating right after. Like it was like a complete revolving door of like, yeah, Microsoft, you better behave lest I be an SVP, right? Like it was that kind of shit. You're like, what the fuck? Okay. And in the meantime, you're like Ivanti Fortinet, everybody like dumpster fires all over the place, and like you weren't saying shit, and you're having like 3-hour fucking calls where you put everyone on the same line. Instead of helping them respond to an incident, you're holding them hostage for 3 hours talking about your sharing initiatives, right? Like that shit was not useful. But that doesn't mean cybersecurity doesn't require any regulation. If anything, we have a massive incentives problem in this space. And it's largely about giant fucking companies and the government. And only the government is in a position, even if it's not as a regulatory entity, but as a giant customer. They're the only ones in a position to look at Google, Microsoft, Amazon in the eye and say, hey, motherfuckers, like shape up. You need to do this and that. It's not acceptable that the NSA like has their shit stolen by the Russians because you suck. It's not acceptable that you ignore a token problem the Chinese are abusing because you don't want to admit to it. It's not acceptable that everybody runs their shit on your clouds and you have neglected any ability of theirs to inspect what gets accessed, how, where, and why. It's not acceptable that all of your security posturing is dependent on logs, but you are going to charge people for access to those logs, retention to those logs, and then you're going to make it hard for them to export the logs or manage them themselves. Like all these things are like, there's so much malpractice as far as like just the cloud space. Just the cloud space is so much malpractice from these companies.
And we're responding by relaxing rules. Like you can't sell me on the idea that telcos have done a good enough job that we have to relax basic rules on what I think standard operating procedure things.
You're just, what you're seeing there is like the it's one version of the story, but really what it is they just don't want to be in the business of regulating American companies. And that is part of a bigger decision by the administration. So I'm not looking at the FCC in particular or anything like that. What I would remind this administration is that, Microsoft and everyone else, like, they're not your friends. And they're not, like, I understand the larger mission of, like, letting American companies, take advantage of the free market and grow. And, like, we're in competition with China, and that's all that matters. I get it. However, there have been moments where your reliance on certain companies has kneecapped you heavily, and they have laughed in your fucking face and moved on, right? Like that, the whole digital escorts thing, like there are national security implications to some of this bullshit.
That story made Pete Hegseth read ProPublica, because he responded instantly to public reporting on this Microsoft digital escorts thing. I was like, wait a second, you read ProPublica, dude?
Right. Well, but look, like that was huge. ProPublica's, they were killing it. But then what? Right? Like, so, and what? So what happens? Right? Like there has to be, what is the slap on the wrist? What is the, we know FedRAMP's broken. We know that these people have fucked over the US government multiple times in multiple ways. With our defense against the Russians, with our defense against the Chinese, with a bunch of shit documented. never self-reported. And yet, like, I'm not saying that these were the regulations that mattered. None of, fuck all of the existing structures. None of them were working. So I don't care if you eliminate them, but please, for the love of Christ, figure out a way to put some teeth back into it, even if it's just for the sake of the US government is their largest customer or one of their largest customers in some capacity. So if we're going to talk about paying with our pocket, they shouldn't get the fuck the US government as a customer on national security issues and still take their money and smile and walk away.
On this same regulation front, there's a big push. I believe they were expecting an executive order around limiting or banning states from implementing any sort of anti-AI regulation or any sort of controls around AI regulation. That's kind of been stalled a little bit, but that's a big part of the conversation that's happening, is the administration removing the ability of the states to do any of that regulating.
That one's a little different, and in that case, I'm actually in agreement with them because I'm actually in agreement with that one, and it's not about not regulating AI. It's, if you watch the All In podcast enough times, David Sachs who is the czar for these things.
That's his North Star.
Yeah, but dude,
but why are you getting your opinions from there? Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not getting my opinions from there. I think this makes sense. I'm not saying that we should not have any kind of regulation on AI, but
the states shouldn't do it.
Allowing there to be 50 different regulations on AI is gonna be a fucking fragmentation shit show. And you're gonna get a really smart one from Georgia and a really dumb one from Alabama and a really smart one from Louisiana and like whatever. You're gonna get all these different flavors, and it's the same bullshit the EU goes through, where it's like you're supposed to have some kind of unified whatever, and then every member state comes up with their own bullshit. What ends up happening is you have a fragmentation of the industry that becomes ineffective. And yeah, you can make money by preying on the local regulation, but you're not advancing as an industry as a whole. The Chinese don't have that fucking problem. The Chinese just do whatever the fuck they think the right thing to do is for their own
and doing
incentives.
The same thing.
I think that at the very least, we should just make it a single, if you're going to have any regulation, have it be a single unified one, just for the sake of people in this country who want to start AI companies or who want to create AI services to know what the rules are and how to conform to them. None of this GDPR garbage. Yeah, you're good. Maybe. We'll see. We'll slap you on the wrist if we feel like it. It's like the Soviet style compliance. Everyone has broken the law. We're just going to decide when to apply it and not. That's not a good ecosystem for developing technologies in like a global arms race.
You just spent the last segment telling me that this new administration has no interest in pursuing any sort of regulation at a deep level, and now you're saying, well, let's wait for this administration to set the rules because
look, man, it's broad brush thinking, but my point here is like there's some theoretical utopic state of regulation, which I don't even know what the fuck it looks like. Because frankly, most regulatory regimes suck ass. Like, they're not really good. So I don't disagree with that, right? Like, we've never had a good exchange about like, oh my God, thank God they passed that law. Like,
but Costin doesn't have bottle caps on the floor anywhere. So that's a plus.
Nothing. And he can't pee in a bottle to stay for a 3-hour podcast.
That's just
perverse side effects. No, but the point here is like there's the utopia version, which is not even on the horizon. Then there's like good regulation in the sense of like you've created meaningful incentives to keep private sector honest and to keep them investing into things that are good for consumers and customers. Then there's no regulation. Then there's also the negative side of regulation, which is what ends up happening a lot in the EU, but can also happen when you let states do whatever the fuck they want, which is a fragmentation of regulation where you have a bunch of it's a regulatory nightmare because you then have to you need to hire 10 lawyers for anything you do and go, are we okay to work in Georgia? Are we okay to work in California? Are we okay? Like it just adds sand into all the gears and does not meaningfully protect anybody. Because like, I don't know what you think is happening at like the state level for some of these places, but like if the US government, if the federal level has no fucking clue what's happening with AI, I promise you, I absolutely promise you that the state of Florida is not going to be the luminary that leads the way, the torchbearer for great AI regulation.
I'm not
like
saying
that's
they
just not
will.
it.
I'm saying that the entire world turns this way when there's need for regulation because nobody knows what's happening in the AI world and what the consequences are. It's like we feel like we're between a rock and a hard place where utopia doesn't really exist and we don't know what that looks like. And turning a complete blind eye and depending on this administration to get folks to self-regulate. No one is going to raise $100 billion to self-regulate when there's these kinds of pressure. It just feels like we're in a
we need
quagmire.
To move. We are, but a big part of it is we need to move away from the term regulation. That's a dirty word. It's just a dirty word in right-wing circles. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna work. So let's get rid of that word completely. What we really desperately need is some kind of incentive structure that means that while these companies are moving fast and doing their best to represent us in this global arms race, that they don't fucking stomp their way, destroying everyone and everything along the way. And that's an incentives problem. It's not, forget regulation, forget big government. I'm just saying, like, you have free market mechanisms for this. You're one of their biggest clients. Pay with your fucking wallet.
I can't get over us trying to be like China. That's the thing. China isn't regulating, so we need to be like them to keep up and compete. It just feels...
Oh, dude, you fucking wish we were like China. China is not regulating. It's not that China's not regulating. China's regulating everything. But they're doing it in a unified way. China comes out from a central authority and somebody says, this is what we're doing.
So there is utopia. Costin, does this conversation bore you?
You're fucking killing me here, man.
No, man, I get the feeling that you guys are becoming like the European Union. So hopefully soon we'll all be brothers or something.
No.
Let's do a quick AI segment. There's a couple of stories cross the radar. We're at an hour and 36 minutes and Costin is going to run out. On Monday, I believe this coming Monday.
My friends, I have cups.
Okay, cool. Good.
It's got an opening.
Pee break.
Wired is reporting they got a pre-briefing from Amazon. Amazon in the AI game is starting to become a thing, apparently. Amazon will publish details for the first time of an internal system known as Autonomous Threat Analysis, ATA, which the company has been using to help its security teams proactively identify weaknesses in its platform, perform variant analysis to quickly search for other similar flaws, and then develop remediations and detection capabilities to plug holes before attackers find them. So this is Amazon's version of maybe their aardvark or whatever it is. Yeah. Some documentation of this is happening for some deep bug hunting. No surprise here, right? They have their Nova thing that we learned about a couple of weeks ago.
Hey, they didn't say they were using Nova.
The fact that Amazon is playing in this space, Juanito, is no surprise to you.
No, it's not. I mean, I'd be surprised if they weren't. I'd be bummed out if they weren't. But I think something that's really interesting is that in what little description we've gotten of this, it very much is like a agentic harness or like multi-agent harness type thing. Like they're talking about having like two competing systems that work against each other and like sort of doing the drudgery of the security auditing and code auditing or whatever work. And then surfacing that up to experts. And I think in a sense, like, I'm not ready to hype up Amazon, but this is a more realistic, like very more plain spoken way of saying, yeah, we've applied it. We've built this thing. we are harnessing, and they didn't even say what models they're using. They didn't say they might be using OpenAI models. They might be using anybody else, but it's like you take the mystery out of it by, you're not saying, oh, we trained the ultimate security model, which is also for sale. And that's what we're using, and that's why we're super powerful. They were like, nah, dude, like there's two systems, they fight against each other, they have a harness, they have tools, they do this and that, and then like security people review the outcomes. You go, that sounds perfectly reasonable. That's a cool thing that you're doing. Maybe you should productize it and offer it to people who have their CI/CD pipelines on AWS. I don't know. Like, do you?
According to the Wired reporting, ATA was born out of an internal Amazon hackathon in August 2024. The security team members say it's grown into a crucial tool since then. It's not a single AI agent developed to comprehensive conduct security testing and threat analysis. Instead, Amazon developed multiple specialized AI agents that compete against each other in two teams to rapidly investigate real attack techniques in different ways. So this is a new approach, making it kind of hackathon-y, I guess, with multiple agents kind of validating each other's work. Any thoughts on this, Costin? Did you get to read the report?
Well,
The story. It's
very
kind of like a
story.
planted
There's no
marketing
report
piece.
here,
Yeah.
right?
Paragraphs, right?
Sorry. The
It's,
marketing article.
Yeah, I did read the Wire story briefly, and I thought that it sounds interesting in theory. I would love to see a bit more details, and especially I would like to see some real world
Success
findings.
stories. Yeah.
Success stories. I mean, you know me, POs. Like I need the proof. I need the proof. I want to see the proof. I want to see the amazing discoveries. I want to see the CVEs, if there are CVEs, or like I want to see the APT names, the group names, operation names, whatever that this thing found while running by itself. So I think it's in practice, it's very easy to judge how good a system is. Like leaving the marketing aside, leaving the PR aside, and you know, you and I, like all three of us together, we've done so many PR studies that we know how to cut through the hype. Like it's either the results that matter in the end, and it's like the amount of new discoveries that you can push. This is the metric that counts. And
This is what I asked Dave Vitale around Aardvark. Is like, show me your work, right?
True.
I'm sure it's amazing and it's saving OpenAI millions and millions of dollars in finding some internal bugs and so on. But I mean, for the rest of us, if you're going to do marketing, you have to show us your work. Which segs into the next conversation, because that was exactly our response to the Anthropic report, that APTs were using Claude AI to automate and Claude Code to automate a lot of parts of it. We got news on Axios that Anthropic CEO has been called to testify on this Chinese AI cyber attack. So maybe we will get some success stories there. Someone will ask the hard questions around what actually happened versus, do you have high hopes for this testimony before the
not really,
Homeland
no.
Security Committee?
Sorry to say, no high hopes, because I mean, if there's like an indicator of hope whenever you see these testimonies happening, and like it's always like very high, and then you see another one goes down, and then you realize that there's nothing new that will ever be said in one of these briefings or like testimonies. Unfortunately, I would take the part 2 of that report. I would take part 2 with IOX over any kind of testimony.
Yeah.
I mean,
these testimonies become kind of like theater where politicians get up and wave questions, and
it's always like a good opportunity for everyone involved. It's a good opportunity for the company to get a bit of even more PR. It's a good opportunity for politicians to show that they're interested about this. How do you call it? AI? Something like that. AI? Okay. So like we care about this AI of yours, and we think that this AI of yours is really important. So unfortunately, yeah, my hopes are not very high, but let's see.
Juanito was in Washington, D.C. You're going to go out to this hearing, right?
Can you?
I don't know, actually. I don't know if anyone invited me.
It's open?
No, but look, to be fair, I think these hearings, like, yes, they're always disappointing, but they're largely disappointing because of the lack of like genuine cross-examination. Everybody there acts out their best like politician bullshit, and they're thinking about the cameras. So you're going for the sound bites about like whatever it is that you care about. and it makes the hearings very incoherent, and they don't have like a point. But more importantly, nobody's questioning what these people are saying, and that's what disappoints me. All I've
Is
ever
there any
wanted.
usefulness to it at all?
Well, the thing is, they're unpredictable, right? Because like
Sometimes
the
you might
problem,
get some nuggets,
every
right?
once in a while, you get one person who shows up, and you're like, "Yo, somebody's aide really went ham on this," and they decided, right, like Wyden will, use the opportunity to sucker punch somebody who works at a big company, and you're like, "Oh shit, like cool,
Right.
interesting, right?" The to
But
me,
do we ignore these hearings then? I mean, I'm trying to get a sense of like, we
you
understand the
can't.
theater, we understand the
Yeah.
politicians using it for their reasons, the companies using it to do their promotions. It's there, it's part of our
Yeah.
system. Do we just
Yeah.
completely ignore it, or do we pay attention to it peripherally, hoping that we get something?
Somebody produces an LLM summary of the hearings, and you
Christ.
scan for anything that might be useful. But like, look, the thing is, it's definitely some level of signaling and pressure to the company as to what matters. And part of what you don't see is the almost like the silent signaling that happens when a senator from Georgia happens to like push the shit out of a company that was debating whether to open an office in Georgia or open it in Alabama, and like the pork barrel part of it like plays out in subtext. There are ways in which you pay lobbyists to understand the machinations of DC and know how to appeal to whom for what to avoid regulation and to get these incentives and to help with the taxes and blah blah blah. And so you are watching some of that stuff play out. And some of the sharper elbows tend to not have anything to do, they almost never have anything to do with the ideals. They have more to do with how how this stuff is sort of playing out in some other more material sense. But there is an opportunity. I think honestly, like if we act less jaded about it, part of the issue here is like you have a bunch of much older people in Congress, and their aides, may not be in a position to really understand what's going on, and that's how you end up in the situation you were describing earlier, where it's like, well, you have shadowy figures whispering in their ears. Part of how that happens is you have a certain amount of aides that work for a congressperson, and they only know so many things about so many things, and they end up relying on whatever person they met at a round table at a whatever that knows about tech. They just so happen to work at Microsoft. They just so happen to work at the Cyber Peace Institute. They just so happen to whatever. And those people are the ones informing the whole conversation. And maybe they even host an event and they sit you down next to 4 other people who all say the same shit. And you go, wow,
This is why Igor was in
leading
DC, right?
this is the thinking around whatever cyber attacks and blah blah, and then you go and report that up to a septuagenarian fucking senator who's just trying to do whatever at the hearing he's supposed to be at, and that's all you get. But like you have CEOs, like all of the tech CEOs have gone up in front of Congress and lied through their fucking teeth, and nobody called them out on it. And I don't
There are
think
no
it was like a
consequences
conspiracy.
for it either, yeah.
Well, there's no consequences, but I also don't think it was a conspiracy. I don't think anybody understands Facebook's business well enough or Google's business well enough to say, hey, what the fuck are you doing? We could fix that.
All right, guys, that was an hour and 45 minutes on a holiday week where there's no news. So let's close the show with some shout
no
outs.
news.
Costin, you gets to go first. Close the show with some shout outs, plugs, anything you want to promote.
I mean, sure, yeah. Big thanks to everyone who showed up at my speech last week, especially
What was the
those.
speech about again?
I spoke a bit about the fact that we see more and more there's an issue with focusing on 90% of the attacks and ignoring the most sophisticated 10%. And the issue comes mostly from the fact that the most advanced threat actors out there, they implement some kind of a full spectrum barrage jamming, meaning that they use code of obfuscation, living off the land techniques, web shells. So they make it very difficult for us to catch their stuff, to detect
Deliberately
it.
so, or just to make their
Absolutely.
operations much more successful? Is it just like a dual win for them, or they're just doing all of this noise to push you off
It's
in the
the
wrong direction?
solution to the problem of modern detection strategies. So this is the, let's say, the flavor of the day, which is an iteration, in my opinion, of what we have seen decades ago with threat actors like Moonlight Maze, with like some of, let's say, the most interesting incidents in history. And I think that with the coming of AI and applying the idea that detection thresholds are no longer sufficient for you to spot an attack, but the magic comes when you correlate across multiple data sets in different fields and you spot variations that show an anomaly. Now, with the shout outs, of course, again, to all the people who traveled, especially people who traveled all the way from France to see the talk. Thank you guys. And to all the new friends that I made there, thank you. And I hope, my only hope is that, I will be able to travel more in the near future with the new job, with the company, with TLP Black taking off. I need to travel. I need to be able to do demos, to meet customers. So hopefully, yeah, on my next list, there'll be a few more countries and trying to see people and friends that I haven't seen in a while. So
Yeah, I saw some
for
pictures on Twitter with some old friends as well. You were able to catch up with some of our
yeah,
mutuals.
so with our friends Sergei Malenkovich, who is now living there, and caught up a
Mr.
bit with
Imbar.
Inbar Raz, who gave me a very his amazing tequila, his chili flavored tequila. I have
We found
two
did
some.
have.
bottles here, one for my friend Dan, one for myself. Of course, and the best thing is that a lot of people came who I think they're long-time listeners of the show, and some of them with the same kind of interests, like martial arts, and it's amazing to be able to talk about common interests and then like completely forget about security and then realize that actually we're meeting because of security, but we're talking about something completely different.
You've been going to Israel for a long time. Sorry to interrupt your
Eh,
shoutouts, but you've been going to
no.
Israel for a long time. Does it feel different now? Does it feel like what's the vibe?
Like last time I was in Israel, I think it was more than 2 years and a half ago. Then, of course, October 7th happened. A lot of people lost their dear ones. So to me, it felt like it's quite a change. It's a change country. People are a lot more aware of things like life is short, for instance, or that you need to do, you can't wait forever. Some people, it was something that somebody told me that after this events, after this experience, he is now seeing the life in a totally different way. Like, stop wasting your life. Like, you need to do something that makes a difference. And when you realize how fragile life is, and how valuable peace is, then you get a new way of a motivation and a new way at looking at things around you, like hugging your dear ones, hugging your children, hugging your spouse, and caring about life and seeing life in a way more, positive manner.
Juanito, I don't know how you're going to be able to follow that, but do you have any shoutouts?
My I don't have shout outs. I mean,
No plugs, no heads up for anyone?
holidays are always kind of like a rough whatever. So I hope everybody's had a nice enough time. I will say, if you're bored over the weekend, go watch The Thinking Game. It's a documentary about Google DeepMind, and AlphaGo I think is a more exciting documentary. Like, if you want to show people who don't necessarily care about AI, AlphaGo is a more exciting one. The Thinking Game is a little more, boring-ish, more intellectual, but I think really explains the approach that DeepMind is taking and why it's different to some of the other AI frontier labs. But also, like, look, I give Google a lot of shit, and on the security side, but I am a huge fan of DeepMind. Like Demis Hassabis is the right kind of like honest intellectual luminary for a frontier lab, and he has used the vast resources given to him by being at Google to do genuinely amazing things for humanity. AlphaFold is a genuinely life-changing, like there's a before and after period in some part of human development, and it's because one dude, obviously marshaling an amazing team, but one dude had the foresight and the executive power and the wherewithal and the leadership to look at people and say, we're going to do this shit, and instead of trying to sell it, we're just going to give it to everybody, and we're going to do all of it, and you're just going to advance for humanity's well-being. And I think it's cool as fuck. And now that Gemini 3 is out, and I can actually feel the effects of what they do, I'm just a huge stan for what DeepMind's up to right now. So go watch the documentary, and let me know what you guys think. And in that same vein, once you watch that, go read what little we know about the Genesis mission, which is this huge project that the US government has announced around building a closed loop AI experimentation platform with the, taking advantage of the national labs. That shit, I mean, I don't know what it's going to turn into, but if we're really serious about that, like, that's a no joke interesting thing.
That's part of the whole states not regulating AI conversation as well. It's this building an AI tech stock that is US based and that we can ship externally and get that to be the underlying thing. That'll be interesting to watch as we move forward. From my side, shout out to our friends at Material Security for sponsoring the podcast. These guys were the first to come out, and incoming, we didn't reach out to them. They reached out to us about sponsoring the show. That's cool. We've actually got some more interest as well. We've got the folks at Thinkst Canary. Harun Mir's company has expressed some interest in sponsoring the show, so you'll hear from a lot more from them. By the way, Costin, Harun had some feedback for you around your hesitancy to sell TLP Black. He says there is a way to sell and to pitch your company that is ethical, and he understands what your struggle with overselling and making sure you have something on there. So shout out to all the folks who sponsored and supporting the show. I mean, it's not an easy show to sponsor because we talk a lot of shit about a lot of people.
And not only that, but we also talk about a lot of other things besides security. And just like Juan was saying, like, watch this documentary. Don't forget to watch The Age of Disclosure. Very important. And if you have time, Google the Legacy Program.
Legacy program.
I already know this is a conspiracy theory thing about aliens.
I don't know what
it is.
How would you know?
Am I right, though?
The Legacy Program.
Let's leave it right there. Have a great week, everyone. Peace out.
Bye. Everyone.